don't know if the Trekkies know who I am. Oh, bless you, thank you. 27 years ago, I was Jon Pertwee's first assistant, Dr. Liz Shaw. Doctor. Right? My husband, Jeffrey Beavers, who also played the Master at one time, apologises for not being here. He has work, wonderful for the family. But unfortunately, it was sad he couldn't come today, but he sends his love and best wishes to everybody. And thank you all for having me today.
You know, actually, Carolyn, for all you fans out there are probably well aware of, is one of those unique characters she was able to play, Liz Shaw, and the fact that she wasn't your typical companion, yes, doctor. She had a brain.
Which often came into dispute with the doctor. So in the end, I think they had to think, no, we've got to have someone who keeps saying. Though I did say it myself 70 times. What are we going to do now, doctor? And I would love someone sometime to go through each companion, every story they did, and just find out how many, what are we going to do now, doctors, that actually are on record. It would be incredible. But at least I had the answers, or thought she had, to some things. And when the doctor was in trouble in Silurians, she found the antidote. So it was quite nice to be someone rather intelligent. But it was her downfall too, because the powers that be just thought, no, she's too clever by half. Very British. They didn't appreciate. Now you see you have the X-Files, and you have, you know, a really top woman who's really thinking. So maybe Liz Shaw was before her time. I don't know.
Well, you know, I just wanted to ask you, you know, fan mail-wise, do you have people that write to you and ask if, or tell you they were inspired by the fact that you were a doctor, that they got into science from watching Doctor Who and seeing you on the show?
What they like is that I think I may have done a tiny scream once when a Silurian was about to sort of pick me up. But otherwise, I never screamed. Now, that was quite an achievement in 1970. And I think most people have had to do that. I'm rather good at screaming, actually, but I was quite glad to be the one that didn't, because that's what fans write to me about and say, it's great. You know, you were someone the doctor could talk to. And it was true that in the end, though she didn't believe and found it very difficult to accept scientifically that there was an unknown quantity out there, she eventually came to respect the doctor and realized she was wrong, which was a nice journey to go for me, that she was very scathing when she had to join unit and gives the brigadier all through a rather nasty time. She is so cool, and it was really fun doing the scenes. Though to start with, I was petrified. I don't know if any of you know, but I had been at the National Theatre for 4 to 5 years under Sir Laurence Olivier. He was then made Lord Olivier, he's died now. But I'd been used to being in Shakespeare and avant-garde plays and things like that. It was very difficult to get into television. And I think you put it in your programme, didn't you? That in the end, I was so frustrated not getting any replies to my face pictures and my CVs that I had myself taken up a ladder in a bikini. And I sent exactly the same people another CV, but this time with a photo of me in a bikini, and everyone wrote back.
Actually, there's a version of that picture for you fans out there that appears in the second Jon Pertwee autobiography, I Am the Doctor, actually.
I don't think anyone's got that photo.
It's just a little one, though.
Oh, I hope they haven't. I guard it with my life. I'll leave it to the best fan when I die.
It's not that exact photo, but it's a similar, probably from the same shoot.
Oh, right. This is quite revealing.
You know, you mentioned earlier about the X-Files. Now you're doing a video series that's similar to the X-Files called The Probe,
right,
that you're reprising your role as Liz Shaw. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Well, on my second convention, and I have to tell you, I must tell you about the first one. It was at Manchester Town Hall, which Manchester's about after Birmingham, about the third largest city in Great Britain. And Manchester Town Hall was absolutely crowded. I mean, this is a trickle compared. There were thousands. And I nearly thought, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is 25 years after I've done it. I must be mad. And I had been invited by people, but I had 3 kids, and weekends are very precious, especially if you're working. So I'd never done a convention. I was very fearful. But I had to come right from the back, and I was pushed on, literally. By the time I got to the front, it was like, ha ha ha, because everyone was so fantastic. Like today, everyone's given me a good welcome. And that makes you very easy. But I tell you, I was real scared. And then I was going on the second convention, Bill Baggs. He came up to me, this guy, and said, would you read this script? And I thought, So I thought, well, I better go and read it straight away. It's probably just crap. Well, I went up to my hotel room and read it, and it was really good. So I changed my mind, said I'd love to do it. And David Troughton, and that was Patrick Troughton's son, was going to be in it, and Colin Baker. So I thought, well, if those 2 are doing it, it must be okay. So, and that was one of the Stranger series, if anybody's seen those videos. And then after that, Mark Gatiss decided to write a program with 2 women, Louise Jameson and myself. And we are Probe, the Preternatural Research Bureau. But how that goes back to Probe, I don't know. Anyway, they said, do you mind? They bought Liz Shaw's name from the BBC. So now we investigate anything the police can't, which leaves a very wide margin. And it's good fun, done very much on the cheap, but everybody works very hard. It's a small unit, and given a bit of more time and money, it would probably be very good, because I think the stories are good. But the last 2, we did 2 in a fortnight, and we don't have anyone on costume, and I provided my own and put charts in this room, and sometimes we'd be doing both stories on the same day. And I would think, right, scene 3, story 1, here. I wear that. And then I chase downstairs, all with the high heels and everything. He said, no, go away, we're doing the other one. So back upstairs again. And so I spent the whole time of those 2 weeks chasing upstairs, changing and changing to get into the different costumes for a certain day. You have to have very strict schedules that if you're doing a story over 3 or 4 days, to help you guys, you try and change what you're wearing so people know a new day has happened. Unless you're in a fix down a mine, and then you're in the same cosy all the time. What are you saying?
I wasn't talking.
You know, it's very rude to whisper. Has anybody got any questions? Hi.
Of all the episodes you were in, which was your favorite of the Jon Pertwee?
It's terribly difficult. I think probably Inferno at the time.
That was my favorite.
And then I look back and then I thought, well, Silurians is a very good story. It's very ecologically minded.
I like
But Inferno was great to do because we were changing. I was 2 characters. I can't remember what was her name. She was a baddie, Liz Shaw. It was as if she'd grown. It was rather good. I looked at it again and thought, oh, that's rather clever, actually. I didn't at the time, you just did it. But it was like they were coming from the same root. They'd both been born, but one had been brought up to be like a Hitler commandant, and Liz Shaw was rather nice. But they were both the same person, but in different time spans. I thought that was quite a good idea, actually, and I had to wear this very short black wig, and mustn't have a German accent, sorry. But it was nice to be able to do the baddie. It's always good fun doing the ones that are bad.
Liz, when you were doing that story, right?
Yeah.
And you were playing the 2 different characters, did you ever sort of think you were playing one, but you were actually playing the other?
No.
You were very easy to do?
Yeah. It's have to go right back to the source of acting, really. This is what people say, and they say, how do you learn lines? And you say, this is the simplest way I can really answer the question. For me, I tell a story. If you're telling the story of someone who runs a camp, like the other Liz did, and is very strict and is bent by rules, actually, in the end, she does wave and she doesn't shoot the doctor, does she? So there's still a bit of good left in her. But you don't tell the story of Red Riding Hood and get it muddled up with Cinderella. That's the only way I can describe it, that when you're playing a cat, you're playing that person, and you're not going to play somebody else, because that's not the story. And I always think the best movies are where the stories are strongest, and somebody has a very good storyline through. It's much more believable and compelling.
Do you have any other questions?
Hi. I'm all right, thank you. Sorry, I missed breakfast.
Did you meet your husband while you were doing Doctor Who or before?
Before, though he did come into Ambassadors of Death. I'd been at the National Theatre and we went on tour, and one of the Nottingham, I was on tour and he was at the theatre, and a mutual friend introduced us in the street. Very romantic. And that was it. Well, not quite. I mean, you know, it doesn't happen quite as quickly as that. But I do remember thinking, why does Chloe always know the nicest chaps? Anyway, she got her chap and I got mine.
Did you have anything to do with getting him on the show?
Do you mean...
Ambassadors of Death, in that little row.
Say that again?
The Ambassadors of Death, did you help him get on the show? Was it your
Well,
suggestion?
he
or?
used to come and meet me and things, and he was known through Mike Ferguson. He'd been doing a lot of theatre, so it was very good just to get in. It's always good to do television. I mean, I still do whatever anybody asks me, I do it. It's good to have your face seen, do a part, even if it's only just for a small scene. So yes, because he knew me, I think it helped. But I'm all for that. I've got a sister who's a casting director, I mean a top casting director, and she never casts me because she doesn't like nepotism. Well, I respect that, but it's terribly hard at the same time. So he's a very good actor anyway, so you know, I think they eventually, he's got this most wonderful voice, gave him the voice of the changeover between Roger Delgado and Anthony Ainley.
Is there any favorite role you'd love to play?
Everyone, I'm terribly frightened. I don't know if you guys at the back can hear that. I've been asked, is there any favourite role I'd like to play? Well, you start wanting to play so many roles and you never do. And you play other roles that you hate to play, but actually you learn a lot from them and say, wow, you know, I've really stretched myself. So now I'm sometimes a bit wary. I'd like to play Mother Courage when I get older, Brecht, because she's rather a down-to-earth, tough woman. I mean, there aren't that many. I've got to write my own scripts now because there's so few scripts for women, older women.
It's a thought, though. You think about writing your own.
Well, I'm in the middle of thinking of something, but I don't like to talk about it in case it doesn't come to fruition. But I think that's where a lot of actors go now. They write their own material now and then do it, because there are so few things for older women, and I think people like watching them. Angela Lansbury's done a wonderful job, you know, with her thriller series, so why not have a few more women? I think they're beginning to now. In England we are, to have the main character as a woman, but it's quite slow to get off the ground. In England we have a thing that there's about, if you're in a play, it's usually 3 women to 8 men. And that's normal. I did a wonderful television called Gaudy Night, which was Lord Peter Wimsey. And this was at a girls' college in Oxford. And there were about 12 of us women. We were all rather spinstery and rather nasty. And all these girls, and there were about 3 men in it, and it was fantastic. I have to admit, I was really scared. I thought, oh God, all these women, it's going to be really bitchy. But it wasn't. It wasn't at all. We all started on our life story, and then somebody say, come on, it's time for scene. And we'd say, what? Oh, we're not working today. We're too busy gossiping. So I really enjoyed that.
Do we have any other questions?
Hello.
Getting back to your first story, Spearhead from Space, what was it like the first few days of filming in, because everything was new, new doctor, filming in color, the BBC was on strike, there was a lot of tension in the air?
I was so, am I allowed to say this, shit scared? I thought silence is really good, just keep quiet. The trouble was, I was very, very inexperienced, very young. And I let them do my hair as they wanted instead of how I wanted. I wore whatever they put on me. The first thing, what we used to do is to film all the outside stuff and then rehearse all the inside material and go into studio and televise that with 6 television cameras. Things have changed a lot since then. When we did all the outside broadcast filming. As I said, I was so scared. I remember going somewhere in King's Cross station, underground, and it was a sequence going to see Lethbridge Stewart. And all I had to do was look out of a window, but I was like this all morning. I mean, I really didn't know what to expect. Then we came to the first reading. We'd done about 10 days. I got to know people. I was more settled. And I was in Ipswich, which was about 4 hours away from London at the time, so I had to travel every day. And I got to the first reading, and someone came up to me and said, "See you in Evesham tomorrow." And Evesham was in the exact opposite direction. Another 4 hours, right? I said, "Evesham? We're rehearsing here." I hadn't heard or been told about the strike. Because there was this terrible strike, and I don't know what it was about. But nobody could use the studios. So in the end, we did the whole of Spearhead from Space up in Evesham, filming it. Of course, the quality is much better when it's on film, because that wasn't videoed. I don't think outside video had come in then. God, it's a long time ago, isn't it? Oh, where's my stick? But what did you... Thank you.
Oh, come on, you're not that old.
Oh, it's rather nice. I could tie a bow, little Bo Peep. But once we got over that, there were always hiccups. I was told by Derek Sherwin, who was the first producer before Barry Letts came to take it over, the one thing the companion couldn't do was to get pregnant. So who gets pregnant? So when I got pregnant, and I think it was the beginning of Ambassadors, and I was being violently sick and ill, and I had to keep saying this terrible flu I've got. And then I had to do all these ghastly things, like running over wet weirs and jumping into the water and being pulled out. And, doctors would have their hair up here, and I was blissfully unaware. My mother had 8 children, and I thought it was easy. But I was quite ill. But my son managed to come out all right. But I do remember flinging myself down when there were some shots and thinking, this is a bit stupid, really, isn't it? I ought to tell someone. And the only person he knew was my dresser, who'd been at the National Theatre with me, and she just took out my seams a bit, so nobody'd know. And I'd say, "Oh dear, I'm putting on weight." So they were all terribly surprised when I'd finished. Sorry. Anybody got any more questions?
How was it working with Jon Pertwee?
Wonderful. John is first and foremost a professional actor. He'd actually done mostly light entertainment, but his whole mind was focused on getting a better show going. I mean, sometimes he wasn't popular with the technicians because he'd say, we do a show, do a scene, and they say, that's fine, let's move on, time being precious. And he'd say, well, Ducky, I think we ought to do it again for the actors. And that was wonderful for me, because it gave me a chance. And I did learn that people do not stop if you trip the actor. They'll stop if a boom comes in or something technical goes wrong, but not for an actor. So John said, well, Ducky, I think you'd better do a 4-letter word. So that's how I learned to swear.
Isn't she good at it?
But the secret was, you swore and then said, oh, I'm terribly sorry, you see. But they had to then go back, because of course you couldn't. But it was the only secure way you could know, because time was very tight.
Did either your pregnancy or your swim contribute to your departure?
Well, nobody ever told me. I don't know if the guys back there could hear. This gentleman's asking if my swearing or being pregnant had anything to do with my being removed. Probably, but I didn't know about it. I don't know. There's a someone, yes.
Do you feel that, you know, you were sort of an enigma as far as companion was concerned, being so well educated, and, you know, do you feel that was a hindrance to, you know, your character being such a hindrance to?
I think the producers did. I don't think I did. I enjoyed being intelligent. I just don't think they thought the formula worked. At the time, The Avengers was going out. Has anybody seen The Avengers? And I think they wanted to upgrade from... It had been with Patrick Troughton, sort of more childlike companions, hadn't they? So they were trying to make it more sophisticated. And sort of not like Emma Peel, but as more sophisticated on those lines. But after a year, I think they found that wasn't the right ingredient. Now, whether they were right or wrong, I don't know. I think in retrospect, we both might have been a bit wrong, that it was better to bring her up. I think nowadays people, especially women, don't want to see everyone just shouting. Quite often when I see a movie, I say, go on, get in there, girl, give it. You know, we're not all passive sweet, even though you chaps would like us to be that all the time. So I don't know. I mean, the series went on for several more, you know, for quite a long time after, so they must have been right in some respect. I think that's all I can say. There was someone at the back. Hi. Would I go back willingly if they paid me?
Did they pay you the first time?
Very little.
I understand.
I mean, it really mean. I think you had to stay in a series, and you do in England, sort of 2 or 3 years, and I was only there a year. But I have to say, it taught me television. And I always thank the BBC for that I had the opportunity to do 25 episodes straight off, and you learn the techniques of television. So at that time, I felt very, very lucky because I'd had experience with the top theatre company in Britain, and I've also come in and then learnt television. That cannot be put away. You know, for me, it was terrific. And really, Doctor Who became just another job in my career. Now it's become a different thing because of this great following. You have become part of a great family. And in a way, at the time, I didn't think I was very good. I'm being very honest now. And then about 3 years ago, someone sent me a tape of Silurians. And I looked at it, and because it was 25 years ago, I just looked as though it was my daughter. And I thought, well, she's very good. What are they worrying about? You know, I'd be thrilled if that was my daughter doing it. Why didn't anyone ever tell me I was jolly good? You need encouragement when you're young. So I rather avoided, when I'd been asked to conventions, not only the fact that I was bringing up 3 children and working and couldn't really spare the time, or didn't feel it was just to them. And I wouldn't have enjoyed the conventions worrying if someone was sick at home. You know, you have to get your priorities right. It's a very difficult thing for women, we all know that. So that's why I didn't... And then when I saw Silurians, thought I was okay, I thought, well, I'll go to a convention before I die. Just to see what they're like, and whether people, thank you, are as... You know, people are very rude about Trekkers and Doctor Who people and that. Now, I thought, well, keep an open mind. And I went and I found everyone so polite, so nice, and actually quite clever people, scientifically. You know, and I realised that fantasy, sci-fi is the fantasy world. You know, people are awfully quick to put everyone in boxes, but I found talking to everybody individually that I've really had fun. And people are not what they're sort of clocked up to be. I mean, you could say, right, well, you're mad collecting paintings. You know, you collect anything to do with Doctor Who or Star Trek or whatever. So chacun a son goût. Oh, ça fait rien. But everyone must do what they want to do, and you shouldn't be boxed. So I've had a pleasant surprise.
So what do you think of your first American convention experience so far?
Well, you're listening.
You might get lynched.
I mean, you know, this time tomorrow you might be going, I don't know.
You know what I thought was very interesting, if we could talk about it a little bit, is your take on the attempted revival of the Doctor Who series, the Paul McGann movie. I thought you had a very interesting...
I beg your pardon? What?
A very interesting opinion on the Paul McGann Doctor Who movie.
Oh, yes. I don't know what everybody else...
On it.
Well, I was thrilled they were doing a film and bringing Doctor Who back to life, and I know Paul McGann is a marvellous actor. So I was really thrilled that and I'm sure everybody else here agrees. The only thing when I watched it, there were two things, and it's awful because we can all criticise, and I thought, well, this is wonderful. The Americans have put all this money into it, and it is great, but why didn't they let Paul McGann wake up sooner to the fact he was Doctor Who, and perhaps get on a penny farthing instead of a motorbike? You know, that is an English boffininess that I don't think perhaps... They probably thought, well, that won't sell. But I think it does sell. I think this rather quirky man with a brain that's sort of centuries and millions of years ahead of all of us would suddenly say, well, actually, in this particular situation, the penny farthing will outwit them better than a motorbike. Am I making sense to you? And you don't know what a penny farthing is? It's one of the very first bicycles where they had a huge big wheel and a little wheel at the back. And to see Paul McGann on that...
has anybody
it's Doctor Who.
Anybody in here watched The Prisoner? Okay, the symbol for the prisoner is the bike.
Oh, really? I haven't seen it. And the other thing I just thought, that the beginning was a bit like Jesus Christ Resurrection. And, no, truthfully, I thought it... And when he was being mutilated by the master, this thing was like a crown of thorns. And I thought, this is getting a little bit too biblical for me. But otherwise, it was great. And lots, you know, everybody loved the feeling that it was still Doctor Who lives. And I think Paul McGann had a terrific... And I didn't mind about the kiss. Quite liked it.
Did you see a lot of similarities between the movie and, say, your first film with Jon Pertwee? Did you identify with Shaw with that character?
People have asked me that, but to be quite honest, no, because... But when people had asked me, then I thought back and thought, well, yes, maybe, because she was an intelligent person and a doctor, you know, so there are similarities. But, I mean, they had a relationship. I used to treat John off screen sort of like a sort of father figure, rather than as a figure... I don't think he quite liked it always. He was quite a womanizer, you know. Oh, yes. But I always treated him as a daddy figure because he knew so much and I learnt so much. I respected him tremendously. There's a gentleman behind you.
Yes, a lot of actors who have worked in Doctor Who through the years have said the one thing they didn't like about it was everything seemed so rushed. They never had enough time. And I was wondering, when you got the script for a particular episode or story, how much time did you have to prepare yourself for the role? Did you just run through it and then go to the cameras? And how did that all work?
Well, can you all hear at the back what that question was? The gentleman asked if we were rushed the whole time, because many people through the Doctor Who years have said that they were too rushed for time. We thought so at the time, but if I tell you now that if I get a television script, I will go for a reading. That's just everybody together and we'll read the play or the story. And then you will go and film it, and you have no rehearsal. With Doctor Who, we had about 2 to 3 days rehearsal. It seemed rushed at the time, and Jon was very keen to get the stories right, and we would change the scripts a lot so that they were far swifter. They made the story far more telling. Then we get into the studio. We have 5 days on it, I think. We do a big run the third day for the producers, who would come in and suddenly say, no, that's all wrong and everything, and everyone would be going, oh, I'm no good. And then we do a technical on the 4th in the studio day, and then you used to run the whole thing straight through on the 5th day. And the time pressure was enormous. I remember I had a very quick change between 2 scenes. They stopped the video or whatever, the camera, and then you would change and you go on. Now, my dresser wasn't there that day, and I got the biggest bollocking for it, and it wasn't my fault. But there wasn't even time to say, listen, it's not my fault I'm not here. I can't get these boots on quickly enough on my own. So quite often there were misunderstandings because of that. But on the whole, it was a very happy show. Too many men. I remember thinking when Thomasina Heine came in for Silurians, oh, thank God, there's a woman I can talk to. And when I did the 5 Doctors, and I met all the other companions, it was bonus day, because they were all exceptionally nice people. And we, you know, chattering away like magpies. Hi.
What do you think of the other actors after Pertwee?
Well, I've done...
Meet them, or?
Oh, yes, because I've done the Probe series with Colin Sylvester, Peter Davidson, and I'd also worked with Tom Baker on Hound of the Baskervilles. So I've worked with them all, haven't I? And also, in their own way, I mean, Sylvester I adore because he's so mad. Tom Baker is a complete eccentric and wonderful. They're also both terribly good actors. Peter Davidson took a bit of time to get... He's a bit shy, but he's given me a lot of advice, you know, on certain things, like hold back here, don't overdo it, which is wonderful. And Colin Baker's just a real honey and wonderful to act with. So I've been lucky in Probe to have worked with all those doctors that I missed. I don't know if everybody else has. Actually, it's a thought, isn't it? That I would love to have worked with Pat Troughton. I respected him so much. I have met him at... The BBC had a gathering not long after I'd left. And he was... I don't think he realised that I hadn't worked with him, because he came up to me and said, hello, how lovely to see you. And I think he thought I was one of his companions. And that suited me, I was fine. So the only person I never met was William Hartnell. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
If you could pick and choose and have characters of your own to do it with, and you could be the companion for a story with any of the other doctors, which one do you want to do?
The first thing that goes into my mind is Jon, because for me he's Doctor Who, because I was with him. But if you... he's now dead, God rest him. So, I wouldn't like to say, I might offend the others. I'd love to have a go with Tom Baker, because he is so amazingly eccentric. And having worked with all the others, yes, I'd probably say Tom Baker, because though I did Hound of the Baskerville, I didn't have very much with him. So it might be quite fun. Also, he's enormous. It's like me saying to my eldest son when he was 15, will you go to bed? Yeah.
Which companion would you like to meet up with?
Well, Liz Sladen is a great friend of mine, and so is Louise Jameson. So I've met so many of them now, and Sophie Aldred is a darling. I've worked with her, because we were all in Zero Imperative together. So if I was allowed to pair, I think with Louise now, because we do such a good job, I think, together on Probe. And she's great fun, and she's also very good and highly acclaimed actress. It always makes you a better actor if you're working with top people. So Louise and Liz Sladen, I think, is very good too.
I think the mystic character would be the pair. He's involved
Well, you know her character, but I probably... The awful thing is, I have to confess this, and I shouldn't really. You know the music... You can all do it, go on. Well, because when it went out, I was very pregnant and had terrible heartburn, that's a sort of sick burning in the throat, I associate that music. With feeling lousy. What a terrible confession. I think I'd better go home to England. Don't tell them over the water I said that.
Children watch Dr. Who as they were growing up?
No. Well, my daughter, who wants to be an actress, she's watched them, but my sons have never... We've got all the videos, and I think they just think, oh, Mum, what are you doing? My second son, he started to come and see me in plays, but I was in a season of plays at the Orange Tree Theatre in Richmond in 92, 93. And they hadn't, I'd been in 4 plays already, and my husband said to the boys, now come on, you've got to come and see Mum. She's got a huge part in this. It's really not fair. I suppose so. At the interval, he said, Tom started to go out of the theatre, and Geoffrey grabbed him and said, you jolly well stay and see the end.
All right, is there any role you would sort of die to do? You know, the ultimate role that you think you would want to do, and do you think you could do it?
Do you know what I feel now?
Of course she could do it. What kind of question is that?
I just answered that question because the gentleman said, what is the role that I most likely would love to do, and would I be able to do it? I tell you something that I've learned, that if only I had the confidence and the know-how that I've got now, that and tremendous confidence. I was brought up in I would be really grateful to God because I lacked confidence. I should have gone into that Doctor Who and said, I know exactly, don't put my hair like that, I am not wearing that. I realise now, if you say it nicely but very firmly, people appreciate it. They know where they are. I'd been brought up in a convent. I was one of 8 children, very Catholic. I'd been taught not to answer back and was very polite and didn't like to offend people. And it's taken me years to realise that isn't always helpful, not only to myself but to other people. So now I feel, yes, I could do most roles if I had long enough to prepare for them. I'd love to do Mother Courage, as I said to Winnie there. I would love to do... I think I'm getting a bit long in the tooth to play some. If I said I'd love to play... No, I'm not going to tell you which one. I'd love to play Shakespeare's Cleopatra. I'd have... No, I probably will never do it now I said it.
You know, speaking of Shakespeare, Carolyn will be doing a little bit of a reading tonight for us.
I'm going to educate everybody.
After dinner at our cabaret, so you should stop by and see her. Give her some confidence. We need a big cheering section of Doctor Who fans in there.
Well, it's not very long.
You know, one thing, Carolyn, you have to do, especially at these shows, you got to learn to lie more.
Lie?
Yeah, lie.
I say I don't believe in that. Often people say, well, what are you doing now? And I watch people and I say, well, they've got 1 or 2 things in the air. Well, quite often you have, but sometimes you haven't. And I think you should say, well, actually, I'm not employed at the moment. I'm certainly not resting. I'm decorating the house and I'm doing everything I should have done when I've been working. But this is such an up and down profession. Some years I have worked so hard and had to sort of keep the family going as well, and you've begged not to have so much work, and other times you're sort of thinking, why doesn't anyone ring me? Why aren't I employed? It's a very up and down profession, and I'd advise no one to go into it unless they really, really felt they couldn't do anything else and their lives would be ruined if they didn't do it. You've got to want it so badly.
Have you ever aspired to become the first female doctor?
Have I ever?
Aspired to become the first female.
I've been asked if, by different fans, in questionnaires. And I think, well, why not?
What's the question?
Whether I should become the first female Doctor Who. But then you see, I say to my kids, if they want to do something, I say, try. Somebody's got to get there. If you want to be a footballer, try. Someone's got to win, as long as you don't get too disappointed if you don't get to the top. I have been very, very lucky. I've worked with some wonderful people and been at the top theatre in Britain, and I think I would say I've been very fulfilled. And I've been, unlike some of the companions, they haven't got a lot of work afterwards. They've stayed in it too long. That problem never occurred for me. Hi. If I played Doctor Who, I should need a nice young man.
Would he have to be a model, or could be a convention promoter?
What about a combination? Well, yes.
Would you want them to scream or just say, Doctor?
Why not? If we all had to scream, at least I didn't. Why can't the chaps scream? Say, oh, help me, help me. Yeah, all right. I don't know if it would last very long. I think, was it you who said, was I told to go because of the swearing? Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Two questions very quickly. First off, can you tell, well, actually, I'll do the second question first. Any American actors, actresses, or directors that you're dying to work with? And also, can you tell us that lovely prank you and Jon Pertwee pulled on Nicholas Courtney in Inferno?
All right, shall I do the last one first? When we were doing Inferno, Nick Courtney, as the Brigadier, wore an eye patch. And probably lots of people have heard this, but for those who haven't, and I probably don't tell it nearly as well as Nick Courtney, John came up to me and said, look, Becky, we're all going to wear these eye patches. And then when they say action, we all stand there, and Nick Courtney, very industrially, writing down, and he looked up, looked at us both, and carried on. And slowly but sure, I saw the twinkle in his eye. We started to go, and it was John and me that corpsed and not him. And we got into terrible trouble. Oh, stop fooling around. Yes.
Have you worked with or met any of the other, Doctor Who, not Doctor Who actors, but other actors in the series who you just hated to be with?
I'm as confused
I'm not
as you
going
are
to
with
tell you.
that
No, there's very few people I have ever disliked working with. I don't think there's anybody on Doctor Who that I didn't... You probably weren't there for long enough. I have one gentleman that I worked with in 1992 who came, and it was a play for the theatre, and he came to the first rehearsal with the part, he's playing my husband, completely mapped out, and he wasn't going to change for anyone, and it could have been anybody saying the lines to him. Now, he was playing a king, and I was his wife, the Queen. And he never looked at me on stage. He looked above my head, Never straight eyeball to eyeball. So after 3 weeks of this is after we opened, I suddenly sat down and went, Henry! I'm not very brave usually, but when I get angry, and I think, come on, we're both meant to be playing a nice scene, and you're not looking at me. This is not fair. And it's very difficult to tell an actor that. So you have to do something on stage that they'll never do that again to mess you up.
So what you're saying is you don't get mad, you get even.
Thank you. It's a very good, I'll give you a bit of advice. When Maggie Smith gave me this, because I worked a lot with her at the National, and this girl I was playing a scene with was doing lots of overacting behind me, and I got a lot of words to come out. And I just didn't know how to stop it. And she said, well, dear, just let her get on with it. You choose a matinee, then turn around at the end, look at her, look at the audience, go, and go. I said, I can't. I said, well, she'll go on doing it. So come this matinee, this woman, very big, started going, ha ha, ha, while I was trying out all my lines. Nobody could hear what I was saying. So when we got to the end of the scene, I thought, go on. And I went, and got the biggest round of applause ever. Because they felt as frustrated as me. And she never did it again. And it's very sad, you see, that you have to actually come out of the character to stop people misbehaving. I quite like acting in the round, which means the audience is all round, because no actor can do this. This is what actors do. That's the best place on stage. So you're having to look upstage. Do you understand? And a lot of actors, they'll start playing a scene like this, and slowly every night, and turn out front. But I get a bit bored with that. I'd rather you don't tell the story, you're thinking about the wrong things.
Have you considered trying this out on Prince Charles?
Have I started?
Have you considered trying this out on Prince Charles?
Sort him out.
He seems to need a good jolt.
You know, I don't think I'm the right person. He's asked me if I would sort out Prince Charles. I don't think I'm the right person. I'm going to pass on that one. I think he's a very sad character at the minute. We've had such a loss with Princess Diana, which has hit our nation terribly. Well, very hard, and I don't think actually the royal family knew how much she was loved, which is very sad. They do now, yeah. I think they're trying to make up for it, and I have great admiration for our Queen. I think she's had to put up with a hell of a lot. I mean, my mother has. If you think you've got 5 brothers and 2 sisters, I think mothers have an awful lot to contend with. And she was brought up in the 40s. I mean, it was a very different era to us now, and we have moved forward since the 60s. But you have to move forward. I do think the English should appreciate their royal family, though. I think it's a marvellous asset, and of course they'll go through bad times as well as good. Does that help? Does that make any sense?
Yes, but I was actually just thinking of someone surprising Charles. I'm still not sure he's been surprised as everyone else. But it doesn't matter.
No, I think we better pass. Something about Doctor Who, please. Yeah.
Last year, Bishop was killed in a novel, in a very grisly death.
Oh.
As the originator of the role, how would you rather have your character end, so to speak, since you are doing the Probe series?
Oh my. I've been asked how I'd like my character to end. I wouldn't. I could generate it. My daughter would like to take it over, I should think. I've not really thought about that. What happens to her in the book?
Basically, she gets in contact with like a flesh-eating virus, and just basically dies by the virus.
Oh, right.
Don't worry, it's only in a book, it's not real.
Who wrote the book? I beg your pardon?
It's Jim Mortimer. The novel is Attorney Weeps.
Is he English? Or Oh dear. I hope I don't have the misfortune to meet the gentleman.
Might he have an accident?
Perhaps he has a death wish. There was another question over there, sir.
Did you and Jon Pertwee see each other socially at all after you stopped filming? Like get together for lunch once a year or something?
No, not really, because I have for years wanted to keep my work separate from my private life. I mean, Jon rather liked having everybody and being a father figure. This is Jon Pertwee. I didn't meet him very much socially, no. I mean, we didn't live very near. And I do tend to keep my private life very private and away. I don't want my kids, I really don't want to be too theatrical. I want them to be normal kids. And so my span of friends were like mothers at school and people like that. Very normal. I think it's a bad thing for theatre children or movie kids to always be in that environment. It's not very healthy. So, though I would know and say hi to these people at work, I probably would. There's very few people I have as very close friends who are in the business. That's very sacrosanct, my private life, yeah. So it wouldn't just depend on Jon, it would be everybody. Hi?
Is there anything you didn't agree with the script?
It's a very long time ago. Sometimes, but I do have this thing in me that you ought to try and say a line if it's been given to you. Sir Lawrence used to say, try the line not once but 6 times, and then if it doesn't work, we'll think of changing it. But quite often things were changed anyway. I had no power. And I do think a lot of actors say, oh, I can't say this. No, I can't. This is ridiculous. And I think you haven't thought enough. You haven't used your imagination. There are plenty of ways to say a line. And you've got to think away from what you normally think. But I don't remember much. There was a bit of argument once when they gave a whole scene of mine to Nick. And because he hadn't got very much, and that seemed absurd to me. So I said they were full of chicanery. That's another reason why I was probably chucked out. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty at this convention. Yeah, I think probably it might have been a bit wrong. Hi.
Is there really an embarrassing gaffe or blunder you made in any of the 4 stories you did with Jon?
I can tell you about, I couldn't drive at the time, and I had to drive Bessie. So I was taken out to an airfield, and luckily Roy Scammell, who was my stunt man, said, I'll take you around, it's double D-clutch, which meant absolutely nothing to me. So I went. Now, unfortunately for me, my eldest brother was the location manager on that particular story. And he came up to me and said, you can't drive. Well, what are you doing? And I turned to him and said, you do your job, I'll do mine. Anyway, the cameraman and the director got into Bessie, and I had to be driving furiously. And then I was on an airfield because I hadn't got my license. And when I went, once I got going, off I went, but I didn't know how to stop it. So I thought, well, I'll try this. This must be the brake. But I didn't know with the clutch whether I would be able to go down gear. But it was all right, and when I got out, I was fine, but the cameraman and the director were nearly sick. And my brother just disowned me. But I didn't see anything wrong, you know. So that was my biggest gaffe, I think. Oh, and another thing, because I was pregnant and I had to shoot the gun, and the armourer came, this was the last bit of Inferno, and we went into another bit of the BBC to practice, and I just couldn't pull the trigger. I really found it was, I'd never touched a gun before. I just thought, well, this has been made to kill. And whether because I was very pregnant, I just could not pull that trigger. So I knew Barry Letts, the producer, would be livid. I mean, I'm paid to do this. So I said to the armourer, where will you be? He said, I'll be right there. I said, well, when I go like that, you pull your trigger. and make the noise. And he did, and no one knew. Because I was too scared. But then when I did probe, and this is 27 years later, and I'm not pregnant, I had this weird guy teach me to shoot a gun. 3 hours in the boiling sun, and I'm rather good at it. So I must have changed such a lot. You know, this prim gun. I'm not going to shoot that gun. Now. So I do it with style, you see.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, the female James Bond.
Thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Carolyn John.